Andrea. Okay, a little bit after 1, let's get started on our Arts and Cultural Commission meeting. First thing on the agenda is voting on the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody read them? Does anyone have any questions, comments, changes?
Karen had a couple of typos that I've already fixed,
Okay,
and that
good.
will be fixed in the final draft.
One other small thing, there's just an A in my last name. MAC. That's just a really small change.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes with those changes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Oh, good. Okay. Next, we're gonna go on and do our work group reports. I notice we usually do them in one order, so I'm gonna do them in the opposite order. Let's start with DEAI committee, work group. Who's speaking for that?
Am I the only one here?
Perhaps.
I wasn't even at our last work group meeting, so,
All right.
Is there some?
I mean, I can look at the
Did you guys tell
document
us
and read
this?
it.
I can't remember
Well, let's
those.
see, I've got the communication. If I received that. Collaboration. I think we got that a couple of days ago.
Wait, let me see.
You can take a quick look at it and see if there's anything in there you want to highlight.
I didn't print them out.
Who else is on that committee?
Linnea and,
Here's a way.
Is Courtney on that?
I think Catherine too.
Oh, is Courtney on that one?
Yes, I think so.
trying to find it.
Well, while you were looking, why don't we move on and do,
I don't
Can I
even,
say something to the diversity group?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
We know, and this is kind of for Courtney, because we noticed that at the Arts Festival, there was a lot of bluegrass, which we like. And it tends to be a lot of indie and a lot of bluegrass. And then there's the Jazz Festival. But it would be really cool if there was some Afro pop, if there was some strictly dance, because the dance last night in the 50th thing was really cool. You know, a strictly dance performance. You know, maybe it's an Asian music thing. I've spoken to Courtney about wanting a salsa or a Latino group coming in. So I'm just thinking part of it, when we did the plan, was the diversity meant the diversity of what was offered as arts. And I'd like to see, I mean, I love the Arts Festival. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying that if there were like a wider range of styles presented on the stage would be really cool.
okay, I'll pass that on.
Sort of like yesterday at the BIPOC Festival.
Oh, is that what that was? I didn't go to the bike.
Oh, it was great. We had mariachis, we had someone doing the hula, we had, it was quite good, actually. A lot of different groups. Okay,
I don't see like the document for the
okay,
DEI thing, so sorry
Okay.
about that.
that's fine. Okay, how about collaboration and resources? Who's speaking to that?
Sure, I can speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wrote the notes, so I'm happy to.
Okay.
So in summary, we started the process of meeting with some developers to discuss and get a better look at what goes into the thought process when developers in town are looking at potentially new projects or buildings that already exist and they're being repurposed. Our focus was identifying spaces that could potentially be transformed to benefit the arts and the arts community here in town, or created to benefit. And we started by meeting with David Schleier from Timber Properties. He came to our work group meeting on August 5th. We had a great discussion with him, over an hour of kind of every facet of what goes into this, those kind of considerations. And some next steps, well, for starters, David mentioned he's incredibly excited to hear that the commission exists, and the work that we're doing across all of our different work groups sounds really meaningful to him. He was going to bring a lot of the materials that we presented to him back to Chimberg Properties. Because they weren't even aware that we existed. So that's some feedback for the communication side.
Oh, yeah,
things,
we're well aware of that.
Yep, yep. He was also excited about some of the ideas that we presented in this kind of just open dialogue brainstorming session. Noting, of course, some of the examples that Chimberg Properties has of the work they are already doing that's in line with this. And a look in, not speaking on behalf of every developer in town, but some of the considerations that Chimberg Property specifically has when they go into this. And a next step would, we're hoping to talk to Kate Cook at some point about separating out some of the specific incentives that might be offered at the city level versus at the state level, including tax benefits and whatever for engaging in projects like this. And continuing to identify additional spaces, continuing to meet with developers, and continuing this process of broadening our understanding while also helping make a name for this commission in town.
I got a
So
couple more.
the notes that Ellie wrote up were really thorough.
Mm.
If you haven't read them, I would encourage you
Yep.
to do so. Because there's a lot, I mean, look, they didn't come out in the quick summary, more specific things that were talked about. It's really good.
And just to add a couple more thoughts, I think Eli did a great job summarizing everything, is I think there was a lot of interest on Dave's part in terms of learning more about the cultural plan. So we did represent a lot of the community feedback and what the community wants to see in terms of live work spaces. He was also very intrigued by the AFTA data. So again, these are just key things that we can be sharing with developers, so they have in the back of their minds, their organizations are aware of it before they even purchase properties in Portsmouth, never mind developing properties in Portsmouth. So I think that was very informative on his end. And then there is a property in Dover that we may have the opportunity to tour that already has live work space for artists, which sounds really cool, including a gallery that they have. So that's one of our next steps that we talked about. And then we're also looking at more broadly different models across the United States that have some really cool work living spaces that maybe we could bring some of those models back to Portsmouth. So, Boston, Burlington, I mean, we're kind of looking out in the Midwest, some
Broadly.
California,
Yeah.
yeah, some different models out there. So thanks.
Has he seen the cultural plan? He said he's interested.
He has now.
Okay.
And he wanted an electronic version to actually disseminate across his organization.
Which we sent.
Which is on the website.
And we sent to him, so he has the link. And actually, I think everybody is aware of this, but if anybody's asking, right on our commission page, One Stop Shopping has the AFTA data, the most recent study, the cultural plan, and who we are. So it's just one spot. So it's a nice link to send on.
And if anyone wants a
needed.
QR code for our website, let me know.
Okay.
Because I was doing, when I did Creative Mornings on Friday, I brought along some QR codes for people who didn't want.
Fun.
Oh, okay.
So-
Can you share that with us? Because so we all have that. QR
Okay,
code.
yeah, I've got two. I've got ours, and then I got one for Arts in Portsmouth, which talks about us and the Public Arts Review Committee.
Would we happen to have one that takes people directly to the cultural plan?
I can do that in about.
We
5 minutes.
did. Yeah. I
Okay,
think-
okay.
Okay.
You have that? You have the QR code for that?
I do.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is the.
She's like, of
communica-
course I do.
See the communications team.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Eli. Anything
No
else?
problem.
Oh,
Okay, great. Okay, Teresa, talk about
Alright.
communications.
Perfect. So we met with Monty and Stephanie, on the 7th to kind of discuss like moving forward, how do we, present ourselves to the community? And so they had some good ideas. We raised a question. Do we want our own pages for stuff? Do we just use Portsmouth like as an avenue to announce our stuff? And it seems like kind of the best way forward is using the Portsmouth page for now. And unless we have like a great following of people that specifically want to see our stuff, but for the most part, Monty was saying like, honestly, their Instagram is just a lot of like closures and not like street closures. So they use like, it would be nice to have like actual content to share. And I think they have maybe 7,000 people, they said, on their Facebook page or something like this. So like a decent following already that we could use. And another option in the future could be to have a page under that as well. So there was a few kind of different methods we discussed there. And then we kind of just also talked about our webpage on the website, kind of fleshing that out further. I didn't want to leave it there, so I made Jen meet with me and do a little bit more work. So I tried to mock up what our webpage could look like. This was Friday before Karen's party. We did this, so.
That's why we drank so
I
much
missed
wine.
two plans.
Good one.
I'm sorry, I just
No problem. I was.
So
Yeah.
you can see it's not really fleshed out with the information. It's more for look and feel. So you'll
I vote
see.
for the pup.
Yeah.
That's Otto.
Yeah, that's my dog. So I used him as all of our pictures for now, because I was trying to get the layout down, and then kind of we can hand everything over to Monty, and he can kind of make it happen for us, I think. So we looked at the parks webpage, the water sewer kind of pages to get ideas. So that's what we have now. And it's kind of like the homepage of our stuff, and it's very like technical, what our membership is, how did we get to be part of this, like who we are, but on a like, I guess not personal level, if that makes sense. So-
Quick question, and perhaps Sean can help with this as well. I know it's important, obviously, hey, how is this body, put together? But is there a way to minimize that information and say, for that?
She's already thought of it.
I'm thinking for us. So if you go back to the first slide, Sean, thank you. So this would be kind of our homepage. So I think we should put our mission, some sort of picture of Portsmouth, because Park had a lot of nice pictures on theirs. And then I said we should do the 5 pillars. They can do like a carousel, so that's why it says that. So you'll see they're labeled there very nicely. And my thinking was if you clicked each one, it could either be just the description of the pillars themselves, if we want to kind of flesh that out further, or in the future, those could be links to things we're doing. There's a lot of options there, but just laying out kind of our 5 like guiding principles. And then on the side, I kind of mocked up what other pages I think would benefit us without doing like too much random stuff that no one will ever know on us, but want to keep it useful. So the About Us page, I think that's slide 3. No, it's slide 2. I thought it would be nice if we wanted to, we could each submit a headshot and just do our names and what we're representing on the commission. So kind of like a face behind our committee or commission. And then put the information that's there now about our term length and that kind of stuff, maybe below there. Technical description below. So that's why those are both in there. Also keeping the link to the cultural plan, which is up now. And then we came up with like a resources. And I think that's slide 5, maybe. I got lazier, you'll see as it goes on.
Teresa, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Did Monty or Stephanie, or did Monty have anything to say about putting headshots on?
No, I didn't ask though. So maybe that could be a thing or not a thing.
It might be not a thing, but
Oh.
I'll just letting you know. I mean, you all should ask for whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's certain things that,
That's fine too. I
city,
just
we have rules.
figured if we like, I don't know, if we're not allowed to do it, that's fine, but like putting who we are up
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Okay, so then skip through
I
that.
think the concern was that the way it's written right now, it sounds like it's all open and is on this commission, because that's the first thing you open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that would be later
Yeah.
and, condensed,
Mhm.
as Jason was saying. So we just wanted to list who's currently on the commission.
And I think.
However
that
that
does
done.
just have their names, no
Yeah.
picture. So that's also an option too. We just have our names and
I
what we
mean,
represent.
there are headshots for all of our city councilors, planning board members. If you go on, you can see their name and click. And I don't know if you can even send them an email, but we do have headshots
Okay.
under, which is nice. Cause then if you see people or out and about,
Take some
kind of put a name
pictures.
to a face, I think.
Yeah.
I can do
Great.
that, or, I'd be surprised if how many people here think they have a good headshot of themselves? right now?
Well, I have to,
I do
my
too.
profession. I have many.
Okay, so I mean, if you need to take headshot, I can do it, or I can find someone I know someone who's good at it. who
Yeah.
might do it for us. And I mean, I can personally do that too.
Ken's got the hookup.
I can, I'll follow up and ask.
Yeah.
And then I'll just maybe have an answer for the next meeting if that's like a go or a no-go. And so these are just like blank ideas for the other pages. So for projects, we don't really have anything going right now, but we thought it would be nice to maybe put what the work groups are up to, because that is what we're sort of doing.
Mhm.
So I just put the 3 work groups and then goals, who's the members, what's their current focus. If we get more, say flesh that out further. And then a resources page, so we kind of said like links to the calendars, because that was one of the things we asked about, was like a central spot for different events.
Mhm.
And a good thing to note is Portsmouth City website, the only events they put on the calendar are things that are either directly on Portsmouth public or property. So like the Prescott Park events would go in there, but the other thing that they put in is when there's street closures, and that's really it. So they're not gonna be putting in like kind of random city events that they're not putting on. So that's a good thing to know.
Yeah, if it's a city sponsored event, yes. If it's just all the tons of events that go on, we don't have the bandwidth to do that.
Right. So we were thinking,
And can I just add, the other
Yeah.
thing that Monty pointed out is we, and that includes the commission, can't be seen as supporting specific or individual artists or arts organizations, which is why that rule.
Mhm.
so then we learned like the chamber is a good spot and the Go Portsmouth, like those are really the biggest ones. So it might be nice if we wanna like not promote events, but like push calendars and show people where they can go. Just have some links to that, have links to accessibility services for Portsmouth. The surveys are part of our sidebar right now. I thought it would be nice to just move those into resources, as we probably won't focus on that as much, I feel like here on out, but still nice to have that data for people who do want to see it. And then that just one link is to, Jen, what is that link to? It's 10 reasons. Oh,
To support the arts.
To support
support the arts, yeah, and it's a nice list. So we just threw that in there. 'cause-
Someone, we have a paper version
That
that
says
someone did that says Portsmouth, but we couldn't find that anywhere. So we're trying to figure out who did that. They must have used a template.
I can scan it.
Well, yeah, talking about too is making it Portsmouth again and then just putting that document up.
Mm.
But the list is nice. It's like it focuses on students. And just like community aspects that I thought
Mhm.
like was just a nice list.
Mhm.
That might have been when they were touring around doing the APTA, reading out the results.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
says 10 reasons to support the arts in Greater Portsmouth in 2024. So it's an adaptation of that. template.
I bet it's
Maybe
on their
somebody did
website.
that.
Yeah, I bet it's downloadable.
Who actually did that?
No, it's from the Americans for the Arts template, but I don't know.
What do you have? Sorry.
What if Robin,
Sorry.
I don't have.
what if Robin would know?
You're Robin might.
Let me see if I can find it.
If Eli can scan it,
Oh,
that's just,
where's that? No, I have not seen that.
I don't know, it was
That's-
somehow
it's
stuck in my
worth a look
plan.
at. And then just because we had a little bit more time, another thing we discussed was the Portsmouth Farmers Market was one example where we could table if we want to talk to residents, but then we were kind of coming up with like, okay, if we couldn't be sitting there, is there some sort of document besides the cultural plan that we could put out that would kind of be a nice explainer? And I think the cultural plan is good too. It's just a lot of paper.
Mhm.
And truly don't know that, unless you're super interested, who's really gonna read the whole nitty gritty. So I thought it would be nice to create a little, Jen's calling it a rat card, but this would be the front and the back, also really not fleshed out, more of an idea. But it would be like a third of a piece of paper, and on the back, maybe just again, the 5 pillars that we're aiming to like represent, and then that's the plan's QR code. That would take them to the full plan.
I like one
And
of
I thought
these.
it would be nice
Yeah.
on the front to just have a little bit of information like about our commission. So kind of got to the stopping place that it would be nice to have like a 1 paragraph or like an elevator pitch or just something that's like a quick, this is what we're doing. And kind of keep it consistent across all of our messaging. So like the same thing that could be the header of our webpage could also be there as well, kind of thing. So that's when we stopped for the day. Yeah. So they're kind of just mock-ups, but I thought it would be nice to start having actual like paper and more
Mhm.
virtual things to get us going.
Nice work, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very nice. I had a question / suggestion. My question is, when we first met, we kind of did the dots and we figured out which were going to be the short-term, medium, long-term wins or areas of focus. What are we thinking in terms of how best to communicate the short-term wins? Because I expect we're going to have more of them. Obviously, we have a pretty significant one with the home-based art studios. So that's a question I have for the group. Happy to weigh in on that. Not to, again, emphasize a studio, but I think there could be benefit in emphasizing the process. So like, can you include a link as to where you even go to start the process to have your art studio, your home art studio considered? I think that because you go into the Wild West and it's a little hard to figure that out. So, yeah, so that would be, how are we going to communicate the short-term wins? Are we pushing them out? Do we want to do, I know I've heard some discussion, had some conversations with some of you. Do we do a, did you know? Do we put it in the Portsmouth newsletter? I mean, something that gets the progress out based on, this is what the community's been asking for.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
I
We
think
did say we could do like a press release or like a little news blast, so it might be nice to put something together for the home art studio. And I also think that would fall nicely under projects too.
Yeah,
If we just
yeah.
had a little like, this is a project that we've completed.
Yeah.
Like, thank you to Karen for pushing that so hard.
yeah.
They also
Um,
want to get it in the
yeah.
email newsletter.
That's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say. Monty said they're always dying for
Yeah.
stuff, for content.
No,
Yeah.
be a good-
Write up a
Did
little
you
thing.
know?
The city
Yeah.
newsletter, the
Would
one that
be a
goes out
good-
weekly? Yeah,
That,
okay,
that would
all
be,
right.
that, I mean, to me, that seems like, I don't know how many people receive it and how many people actually read it. But I think that'd be one good place you can reach a certain amount of it.
Karen, yeah, I'd love to.
And that, I mean, and that's easy to do. That's a, did you know type thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Did you
So-
know you can do this?
He also said, sorry, I keep jumping in, but
No.
Monty said we could put it on channel 22 if you just make a slide. Did you know that this just happened?
yeah,
Then it could go on the city, whenever things are happening, a little 10-second ad or whatever. So
Once again, if we just had like a consistent, like, here's a couple sentences about what it is, it's
Yeah.
easy enough to literally take that and just put it on a few more like platforms and just say, Monty, like, here's a little media kit. Or like, yeah, we're announcing this.
so what I'm happy to do is just do kind of a draft of the verbiage,
Yeah.
just some ideas. Send it to Sean, people can weigh in on that and maybe do the same thing for like a 1-page slide. I know Channel 22 is also doing, for example, they're just like capturing senior art projects and they want to fill, they're filling with commercials, they're filling projects that are being done around the city that are like arts related. So I thought that was actually pretty cool.
yeah,
So,
we could
yeah.
do more of that.
And just one last suggestion is, when we're thinking about what we're calling ourselves, I know we're using different acronyms and all that. We should probably come up with like, are we the ACC? Are we the AC&C, the AC&C? I mean, there's all different. So maybe we just come up with like a very consistent way that, what are we calling ourselves? Just as a thought.
I've been calling us PAC, Portsmouth Arts Cultural Commission, because at least you can kind of say that instead of AC.
Awfully close to park.
Yeah,
Awfully
yeah,
close to park.
yeah.
With the Boston accent. What did you say?
Actually, I like AC and C.
Well, it's
AC&C.
it's
I think
actually
there's a nice
A and
word for
C.
it.
It's
AC.
A and C.
Arts and cultural commitment. A and
Yeah,
C.
A
ampersand CC.
CC.
I think, I mean, because that way we don't sound like we're some sort of sports thing and we,
Sports
you know,
Network, yeah.
And,
Dictator in Egypt.
yeah.
So can I just jump in just to level set a little bit? So it sounds like you got the message from Monty. That if you all create the content,
Mhm.
then that starts the ability for us, the city, to amplify, promote, and do those things, put things, change the web pages, et cetera. But at the end of the day, PAC is part of the city. So that is why everything must go through myself
Mhm.
and Monty, not because we want to do all that work,
Right.
but because we have that responsibility.
Mhm.
So, but this is great conversation in terms of introducing yourselves and then kind of branding and then letting people know what they can expect, letting them know the work you're doing. I think it's all great and it's a lot. So pace yourselves, right? Just in terms of, it all sounds great and it's got to go through certain processes. So
You mentioned press releases briefly, but I think the Herald is a key outlet for this kind of information, and I haven't seen a lot of coverage of it. So I don't think we want to overlook the connection with Howard Altschuler.
and those especially have to go through the city.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
but still, we don't want to
Yep.
overlook that because
Yeah.
they're,
Send her whatever we want to send her.
Mhm.
She-
Quick
To your
question.
point, Jeffrey, I don't think there's anything in the Herald about this commission, to the best of my knowledge. I think the last thing was actually an update on the cultural plan. So we're a little, Overdue,
So that's
probably.
probably, so we should draft some sort of something.
Get something in front of Monte, yeah.
To help
And Stephanie.
Stephanie get started on that, yeah.
It
If
should-
if you haven't already,
Question for
please
you.
read the little write-up that Teresa did on our meeting, because it covers a lot of these points. It's a nice capsule of what we discussed.
Yeah, I had a quick question for Sean. So as just playing out, if we do start all of a sudden creating more content, which I think that we as a group really need to do. Right now, we talked about going through Monty. It's going to be on the Portsmouth Facebook page. But if we get to the point where we believe that the Arts and Culture Commission itself our activity warrant its own Facebook page, that still gets run through you guys, correct? Even though we,
Because it's still.
Yep.
It's still a city entity.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
we can maybe create a little more personality reflective of the Arts and Culture Commission, but it's still going to be, it's still an extension of the city of Portsmouth and has to adhere to policies, guidelines, all that good stuff of the city.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Thanks, Teresa. Anything else for anybody?
nice job.
Yeah, no, we're doing our best to communicate.
Can
Find ways to do it.
Actually, if I may, one of the other things that came out of our meeting, the communications group, was the identification of, or kind of talking about the neighborhood network groups,
Citywide.
citywide neighborhood groups, and realizing that they would be a wonderful kind of, to get broadcast at scale through these groups. So I reached out to the one of the co-chairs of the citywide neighborhood groups. And I've been in contact with a couple of them now, explain to them what we'd like to do, who we are, what our mission is, and the fact that we do want to make sure that the voice of every neighborhood in Portsmouth is being heard, and not just downtown, which I think everybody kind of defaults thinking,
Mhm.
if it's not downtown, if I'm not downtown, I don't matter. So got that line of communication open right now, which is great. And there's a eagerness on their part to hear, okay, well, what do you want from us? What are you doing? So I told them just to be patient, and that we would, the most important point was establishing the communication, which we have now. So I'll update you more on that later. But when we have things to talk about, we've got partners out there who want to hear us, want to hear from us, which is
Yeah,
great.
they do meetings in all the neighborhoods, and so it'd be worthwhile to have somebody there to speak about who we are, bring cultural plans, have QR codes. I think people really like this because, when I spoke on Friday, I had as many people come up and scan my QR codes as took copies of the cultural plan. So that, so that's good. So we, should figure out who we want to have speak about it, what we want to say, and.
Okay.
But thanks for doing that, yeah. Okay, anything else on communications? Okay, thanks, thank you all. Okay, now we have our special guest, Andrea Pickett, and who is the with the Portsmouth Housing Authority. And Andrea, why don't you come up here and sit by one of the microphones? And
They're up there too.
Got a couple of our annual reports here. And a card with a QR code if anyone's interested in the bigger picture of the PHA. I hear you're looking to communicate with developers, which I think is great. That feels very far away. So I am the director of community outreach and engagement at the Portsmouth Housing Authority. I am here today because I think the arts are great. I benefit from them as a resident of Portsmouth. And I really appreciate you having me here. Some background about myself is that about 20 years ago, I attended the first Art Speak meeting in Portsmouth when we all sat around in a circle and talked about how to make art more accessible, how to make art more appreciated, and one of the common themes back then was that housing was a missing link in workspace. And so fast forward, here we are today, and art is appreciated and it's accessible, but housing and workspace are still a missing link. So the Arts and Culture Commission is the only city commission which allows members to live outside the city of Portsmouth, which I think is very important to recognize. I know you all know that, but I'm saying it for the audience who may or may not view this on Channel 22. But artists can't afford to live here. And as the Housing Authority, we are trying to meet that missing middle of people who can't afford to live in Portsmouth. We've been diversifying our portfolio. It used to be we represented the elderly, and then we represented elderly and disabled, and then we represented family, people experiencing poverty or lower than average incomes. And most recently, that missing middle has become the workforce in Portsmouth. And so we're thinking a lot about who are those people that are not being included in the housing community of Portsmouth. And the artist community is special to me. I just came on to the development side of PHA at the beginning of this year. And so in my new role, I've been thinking about what does that look like? And I think the art community deserves to be represented. And I will start by saying PHA is not, we're not at the precipice of announcing an artist live workspace, but we are curious about what are those needs specific to the artist community? What kinds of rents are accessible? You know, we just opened the Ruth Lewin Griffin Workforce Housing, which starts at $1,100 a month for a 1-bedroom, which is, I think, better than you're going to find anywhere else in the city. But is that accessible to the average artist? Are they looking for a 1-bedroom? Are they looking for a 2-bedroom? Are they looking for live workspace? Or at this point, is it live space? I've already got workspace somewhere else. How much space is it in the same unit? Or is it, I need a live space and then within the building somewhere, there's a workspace. So really just any questions that you can answer for us that would help us get a bigger picture so that we can think about it. It is something, there is existing framework within the federal regulation world that would allow us to meet needs of artists. It's something we haven't done, we haven't conceptualized. It's not, you know, we can't say whether or not it makes sense for us, but with a little bit of help, we could probably get there. It's one of those, if we build it, will they come kind of things. Let's see if I missed anything in my notes. I think that's probably about it. I could tell you more about the PHA. I didn't do a whole lot of that. We were commissioned by the city in 1953. We are an independent quasi-governmental organization. We have a board that's represented, board of directors and a board of commissioners. So we're a 501c3 as well as a quasi-governmental organization. We provide the residents not just with housing, but with services. We have a department called Resident Services where we have individuals who meet with residents and talk about goals and talk about struggles and figure out what resources are in the community already or look for resources in order to make people successful in renting and living in Portsmouth, which is also unique. I don't think any other landlords I know of are doing that. We are the largest landlord in Portsmouth. We have 13 properties right now, and that represents 682 units. We also hold 459 vouchers and Section 8 vouchers and an additional 25 former foster youth vouchers, which are specific to people who are leaving the foster system to help them become independent. These programs, former foster youth, resident services, we opt into them. It's not like we're mandated as the PHA, you have to do this. We are looking at our community, we are trying to meet the needs. And so that's who we are.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The discussion we had with David Schleier, we were talking about live work studio space. And he was saying that to put live work studio space into a residential development would be difficult, and there's obstacles at the state level, I think, as well.
Mhm.
But so basically to have a residence that or if it's a rental, I mean, if it's a home, you can do it now. But if it's a rental or something like that, it's hard to say, like, take a 2-bedroom unit in a residence and make a studio in the second bedroom. There's a little bit of a conflict, and he kind of flipped that on us and said it would be more doable to do a work-live space. In other words, put it into the commercial section of the development with a residence in back, rather than the residential section of a development with a studio in back. And I was just wondering if you were to have some sort of a set aside or program or whatever targeted towards artists, does it flip that way for you as well? Or do you somehow, does the live work model rather than the work live model still work for you?
Well, I will say that I just joined the development team at the beginning of the year. So that's not something that I specifically can answer for you. What I can say is that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the blessing of the rest of the development team and Craig Welch, who said, yeah, I'd be interested in knowing about that. And they are very well versed in all of those, intricacies. So I don't know if you're asking because that sort of answers one of my questions of whether it's, live space alone or live workspace. I know gateway zoning is something that the city is actively working on, which is allowing for more mixed use properties. We are currently working on a property that's a mixed use property. It incorporates both living space and working space on the same parcel of land. It's the Christ Church property, which is going to be 44 units of workforce housing, as well as headquarters for Haven, 7 units of transitional housing, child care center, and the church is still going to maintain a small rectory there where they will hold services and offer community outreach. So that, to me, says that there's options that I can't, specify or get into what they are exactly. But again, I wouldn't have been given permission to come here and talk without the confidence of the organization. We vote as an organization about what is a smart investment of our time and our resources. So here we are.
Question, do you know if there are any grants or the projects you guys work on, is there always a housing element to it? Is there ever a workspace, a kind of standalone?
Well, there's, as far as I know, always a housing element. I don't think that we personally, certainly not currently, we haven't invested in a standalone commercial.
I assume that was the answer. With that being asked, and I think you probably addressed it accurately, are you aware of the existence of any grants that might be out there on a federal level, state level, that would fall into the housing with some slant towards the arts or creative space in housing?
Well, again, I can't speak to the specifics of that, but I was told that there's existing framework that we are about funding, especially with workforce housing, by keeping the costs of construction and development low through grants and tax incentives and other funding sources. That is how we, in turn, pass on that savings to the renter. And because that's what we do, and we're a nonprofit and we're connected to those federal agencies that grant that income or that development costs and incentives, etc. It exists. I don't know what exactly it is, but it's there. Mhm.
Have you heard anything? Is there any way you can think of that we can help you? Have you heard anything? during-
Yeah, so what I really want is a picture. I want this picture of what does it look like to, first of all, I think one of the biggest questions that I have been asked in this conversation internally is, if we build it, will they come? And I think the answer is yes. But I guess the answer is yes, but in what numbers would they come? And yes, but what are their needs? Are they going to be, is a studio space sufficient? Is it families coming in as artists? What are those income limitations? Just really, if you build it, will they come is the question. And I think that you can answer that with more detail than I can, so as many details as you can think of or that you've already gathered. I know there's the American Community Survey will tell us about the demographics and what income ranges are and how they're spread out, but they're not going to tell us how many of those people are artists. We can sort of see how many people of certain income ranges are coming and going from the city. Our area median income is rising, right? Which tells us that either people are by and large making a lot more money, or people with lower incomes are going out and people with higher incomes are coming in. So really just those details.
I was gonna say that, oh, sorry, Karen.
Go ahead.
One of the other things Monty mentioned, which I can't remember the name of it, was that we can do surveys through the city.
Flash vote.
Flash vote,
Mhm.
that was it.
Yeah.
So that might be an interesting thing for us to think about, how we would want to ask that question for you. The other thing I was just going to say is that so often when people talk about artist housing and live workspace, they're talking about visual artists. But,
Right.
you're connected with theater. It's so difficult to get help. Actors come from everywhere, but technical help, are very, very difficult because they tend to want to live in bigger cities where they can command higher prices. And if we want to attract them up here, we have to offer them something.
Mhm.
So I think those are the type of artists, dancers, theater
Right.
folks, even musicians that don't necessarily require extra space. They just need a place that's reasonable to live in.
Right.
Um,
So for
so
instance,
there's both of those.
right. It could look like a mix of purposeful spaces within a development where some units are live work and some are live, and maybe the whole building is arts, or maybe it's within a future development and we say, yes, there is a need. We're going to dedicate 5 or 6 of our units here to the arts. I guess, there's so many potential ways that it could be done that really we just need to figure out what that need is, who those individuals are, and it's really just, it's exploratory. It's sort of a creative process at this point. It's not, like I said, there's no precedence of us doing this personally yet. There is a potential, framework that we can follow, but really there's like Legos, like how would you build it,
Andrea, I'm Karen Rosania. I've actually had the privilege to be able to teach several art classes at the various residences for Portsmouth Housing. And I found it to be very art supportive and really a great group to work with. And I also think the fact that you've put some investment into your community spaces, so it's beautiful, well lit, just really nice space to be able to teach classes. My question is, and I'm just thinking out loud while you're talking, is with this new ordinance that we got passed through a lot of feedback from the community, art leaders, artists, and all that, it basically enables an individual to have up to 2, let's call them art students, come into your home,
Yeah.
and be able to teach classes by right. up to 6, but you have to go and get a conditional use permit in front of planning board, et cetera. But as we were talking about this with the resources and collaboration work group, it's a wonderful step forward for individuals that own a home. But could there also be an opportunity for people that rent? And what we have a question on, and Jason and yourself may be able to add some perspective to this as being familiar with leasing agreements and all that, is there a language in your current leasing agreement that would prevent an artist today from teaching art classes up to 6, let's call it, in one of your community spaces? So do you have language that says basically, and I'm just going to throw out words here, I'm sure it's not this strict, but under no circumstances are any businesses allowed. So I just wonder, could we look at the language that there could be some short-term changes that would allow, because I know in some of your buildings, you have a very strong concentration of artists that are just amazing. The cottages right here,
Yeah.
for example. So I'm just wondering, could that be looked at? Could there be language modifications that would allow some of your artists right now to be able to take advantage of this new ordinance, would be my question.
That's not something that has come up for me, as either personally, being able to say yes or no to that, but also I worked with resident services before I took this role. And so I worked directly with residents, and I never had anyone questioning whether or not that was a path. I do know that we try to offer community spaces. And particularly, so at Gosling Meadows, for instance, we've invested a lot to the outside spaces. There's a community garden, there's a pavilion, there's basketball courts and playground, and the indoor space was converted for lack of use into a preschool. So, but with our new developments, we are working on indoor space for a lot of them. That's communal space. So I don't know whether or not, that could be something, even if it wasn't part of somebody's, the answer is I can't specifically answer, but I can look into it and get back to you.
Yeah, and I'm just, whatever you find, I'm just curious, is that the same kind of, is there like a standard leasing agreement? Is it unique for Portsmouth Housing, or is there one that's very consistent across the state that we could just understand what is the language in there right now? And is it just simply a matter of trying to get a sentence or two modified that would allow renters, where they meet the criteria,
Right.
to be able to teach art in the city?
I will say that modifying our leases may or may not be something we can do. I know that income is specifically with our subsidized housing is very tied to what you're paying for rent. And so there's a certain intrinsic need to monitor that kind of thing. So it may or may not be as simple as just changing a lease, especially because a lot of those regulations are through HUD as well. But I can look into it, and I can ask, how does a rental fit into that ordinance change?
Well, and some of the Section 8 vouchers, that's all different leases with different organizations.
Right.
Too.
That's a landlord's individual discretion. And we do, right now we have 400 and close to 500 or 400 and almost 60 Section 8 vouchers. So that's 460 individual leases that landlord is the one who's deciding what their tenant can or can't do within that space.
Great, thank you.
Andrew, thank you for being here. I love hearing about all this, especially given how parallel it is to some of the work we're doing. I have one you probably haven't heard about this ordinance change because it was only like a month ago. I think that
I
officially.
did hear about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's how recent we're trying to get on top of this. So how recently we're trying to get on top of this. So that's one thing. And then on the other side, I was just gonna say, the Ruth Lewin Griffin building, I actually know somebody living there and he works in the arts in town, and he wouldn't have been able to live in town. He probably would have left his job had he not found affordable housing in town. And now he gets to work within a couple blocks of where he's living. So
I love that.
it's the perfect example of how this can benefit the arts.
If I can just jump in, the artistic director for the Seacoast Rep also lives in there. So there's like,
Yes.
That's all.
it's amazing.
Mhm.
To your question about if you build it, will they come? Absolutely is our understanding.
Yeah.
We're pulling that information from
Yeah.
lots of different data points. And I would also say it's broader than just the people making the art. It's the tech workers. It's the
Yeah.
people working for those arts organizations. The same way a lot of these developers are concerned about building housing for their restaurant workers or whatever. It's anybody supporting the arts in this town.
Sure.
There's definitely the numbers to support these kind of projects.
I hear that and I believe that as well, but I think one of the issues that puts even a modicum of doubt into that is that when you build a developed workforce housing, artist housing, you open it up and you have, let's say, 44 units of housing that are available right then. And every month that a unit is not rented, that is a loss to the person who's maintaining that building. So it's kind of like that flow of interest needs to be equal to the amount of investment.
I think especially if you're dealing with below market rates and lower costs and rent, in order to support some of these arts initiatives, I think that definitely I can see, unless it's already paid for through a grant or something like that. It's
Right.
yeah, it's a
Right.
risk.
I think I'm the only person who works with New Hampshire Theater Project who lives in Portsmouth, and I only am able to do that because I have incredible landlords who give me affordable housing. Otherwise, I'd be in Rochester too.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions for Andrew?
I wanted to say a personal thank you because my mother is in Section 8 housing, and the generosity and the help from the Portsmouth Housing Authority and the young woman that we worked with, it's just fabulous. And she wouldn't be able to live here either if it weren't for that. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Moving forward, will you be our point of contact?
I can be your point of contact, yes. And I also, I started working for the Housing Authority when I lived at the Housing Authority. I don't know if y'all know my story, but it is really truly a place where, especially if you're starting in that lower end and your income is dependent on, or your rent and your income interact, it gives you that flexibility to be able to pursue your goals and then eventually get to a place where you're doing something different. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Andrew.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And
Thank y'all.
Hopefully, this will be the first of many discussions.
Yes, I hope so as well. And I'll leave these here and you can take a look at them when you're all done here.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
Sure.
Okay, next burning issues. Anybody have any burning issues? There's none listed here. Really?
We've kind of come up with a lot while we were talking.
I know.
Other meetings like they just like dominate. Okay, good. So, I guess then, we can close out the meeting. When's our next meeting supposed to be? It's, calendar here real quick. So it'd be
Yeah, September 16th.
September 16th. Okay, is there any reason why anybody can't do that?
And can you remind me, do we have a sense, do we have another person coming to speak for or do we have somebody lined up for the 16th?
I do not know. I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to check with, I don't know the name.
I'm sure that it'll be included in a agenda or whatever. that-
Okay.
Yeah.
But if anybody has somebody they think would be really, we should hear from and talk to, please, let myself and Emma and Linnea know, and Jeffrey, as our secretary, can write it down for us, and just let us know and we can work it in. So I don't know about you guys, but I always find these to be very,
I have an idea.
you know, they
Maybe the
just-
New Hampshire Art Association or,
Yeah.
bringing them in.
mandated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that'd be good.
That was.
Okay. If there's nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second? All in favor?
Hi.
Thank you all very much.
Hey,
Conversation.
thanks, guys. Sorry, I've been up here on Zoom the whole time, but I've enjoyed listening.
Thank you.
Kate.
Who was that? That was Kate?
Kate.
That was Kate.
Yeah.
Communications group here. Maybe we should set another time. to-
Yeah, that'd be great.
About to say.
You guys, somebody want to
Since
propose something?
We have our whole committee here. We should set a time to